Okay, an incredible film, something that I think everyone should see. You mentioned that you had a personal connection to this story. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Right. So, aside from just being Indigenous and having this issue affect Indigenous women and girls in Canada, unfortunately, I'm connected to 9 victims of the 1,181. And I'm connected to them through family, through my friends, and through my communities. There's women that have lost their lives or that are missing currently in both my home communities in Six Nations and in Kitigan, Zibi, as well as in areas like Ottawa and Toronto. And it's just something that I knew I wanted to shine a better light on, expose the severity of the issue, and also the fact that I come from a family where I have no brothers. I have all sisters. I have 4 sisters, and we were raised primarily by my mother. Yeah. So it's a scary reality to live in, knowing that 1 in 5 Indigenous women will be murdered or will go missing. Well, I have 5 women in my life like that, all 4 of my sisters and my mother. So it's almost like which one is going to be directly affected by this issue. It's scary.
Yeah, that's that really hits home. You think just the numbers right there, right? Like that's making the film. I'm sure like you had many lessons. Like I know there's a lot I just took in myself watching it that I'm going to be thinking about from now on. What was the greatest lesson you learned from the experience of making this film?
Overall, the greatest thing that I learned from this film is the power of media and the power in myself as an Indigenous man. A lot of times I doubt my abilities, and I question, will I be able to do something? Because I'm Indigenous and because of how society is, I think like I'm almost set up to fail in a lot of ways. So taking on such a big task, like to do this issue justice through film, I knew what it was going to take out of me, and I want that to serve as a message to other Indigenous youth, Indigenous students, that you can actually do something and succeed. No matter what scale, minor or major. This was a major scale, but I think it's a testament in how we as Indigenous people can utilize our education to help our people, to help our communities and our families.
Yeah, it's something I was thinking about. Jackie Labonte, 20 years of activism in working on this issue and other issues as well, and to think of the things she's seen and experienced over that time. For somebody that may just be getting exposed to this issue, it can be very daunting to think of the severity of this issue. And why should everyone take the time to watch this film?
At the heart of this issue, it's a human rights issue, and there's a lot of politics involved. And I think that people just need to be more socially conscious, more socially aware of what's happening in their backyard, in their country. When it comes to Indigenous issues, unfortunately, our allies, the Caucasian people, the Canadian citizens in this country don't actually know to what extent these issues they're having a negative impact in Indigenous communities. So people need to understand that there's this issue and there's so much more going on. It's this uphill battle that we're going through, and I think people need to be aware that it can change, and that comes through knowing more about these issues, educating yourself, because the education system isn't going to do it for you, and media is not doing it justice. So you have to take on that responsibility in your own if you want to live in a better society.
Oh, thanks. There's one thing that really hit me with this story was the Macy Ojik and Shannon Alexander, and it was Macy's mother. She said that she was living in fear. Could you talk about that, the fear that you experienced firsthand, like speaking with these people that are survivors and family members of these people, some of the women and girls that have gone missing or been murdered? I couldn't imagine living in that kind of fear where he's afraid to let her daughter go to the hockey rink to watch a game. You know,
Right.
it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, Maisie's mom is a fighter, and she's never given up on her daughter's case, and she's been faced with a lot of adversity the whole time. I think for everyone, there's a fear in them that they could lose another family member if they're already suffering from the loss of one. And then there's those of us that haven't experienced that directly in our immediate family. But there is an actual fear that it could happen. That's the reality of the situation. That's the reality that we live in every day. And I think that you can't let that fear consume you, though. And I think that that's what they try to get through. She, you know, in her interview, she states that she is fearful of that, but she's also aware that her daughter doesn't need to live in her mother's fear. So it's that awareness, I think, that helps get them through that. It's a really tragic and scary truth. I can't really speak for all of them. I just know that I admire their strength, and I wouldn't think that they're scared. I mean, that's something that she opened up about, you know, on a personal level. But you know, when you see them out there on the front lines as activists fighting for this issue, you wouldn't think that they're scared, and they're standing up against the government, they're standing up against law enforcement, and it's actually inspiring.
Oh, big time. Yeah. It's you know, I'm thinking about. There's so many things that as we're talking, they're coming up in my head. But with regards to the inquiry, I can't remember who said it, but you know how it's. I think it was Nikki Ashton.
Right. Yeah.
About how that's a good first step, right? Mm-hmm. And you know, what's needed now is parallel action. You know, beyond that, could you talk about, you know, the types of the type of action that is needed? You know, within, you know, I sensed a need for like strengthening the interconnectedness between individuals and families and communities. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Right. Yeah. So what I noticed in making this documentary is that there's so many different organizations, there's communities, individuals that are all fighting to see justice served for this issue. But the thing is like there's so many different ones, and there's different opinions from activists or individuals and organizations that I think what needs to happen is that we need to unify as one. It can be confusing, especially for people that want to help out right away. I've been asked that in the past, like, how do I get involved? How do I help? And there's not one central place that I could tell people to go to. Logically, people are going to automatically think that they need to go to their local Native Women's Association, or go to the NWAC, the National Women's Association in Canada. Yeah. But that just isn't so. There's so many conflicting opinions about where to go and who's doing the most work. I think it's important that everyone's doing something, but we need to find a way to unify it so that we're all fighting together. I mean, like, you know, it's something as simple as like with the hand. You have 5 different fingers, and they're all a force of their own, but when you bring them all together, it's a fist, and it's a lot stronger. That's how we need to look at coming to fight this issue.
Right on. Yeah.